I'd like to call this house to order. Please be quiet. Quiet, please. Call this house to order. Thank you for coming to the exhibition debate this evening. We're excited to get it started. We are excited to hear a debate on the resolution this evening that we should legalize duels to the death. And with that, I call upon the Prime Minister to offer us a 7-minute speech in support of the resolution.
Well, hello everybody. We're about to legalize duels to the death. Now, after offering a very brief description of how this is going to work, because we think it's straightforward, I'm going to offer you two very broad points. One of them being, when does the government limit people's choices? Why do we think these limitations should not apply in this case? Second, talk about duels itself. Talk about the question of honor, why it's central to the human existence, and why we believe that the right to die applies to these circumstances. Before all of that, we're obviously talking about two reasonable, consenting adults coming to an agreement with each other to duel to death. We're going to make sure that people are not getting taken advantage of it by prosecuting those that do not have this sort of consent before that for murder. When it's two people that consent, they can just slap each other, whatever they do, and say, we're about to duel. And then recognize the results and give an award to the winner. Radio Moff to be live streaming it. Now, first question, when do we limit people's choices? Now, the reason we limit, we have laws, or we have a government, or we have a society, is simply because we think that in order for society to function, people should not harm each other. There should not be direct third-party harm by our actions. So when someone, for instance, sells drugs, the reason we ban the sale of drugs isn't because drugs are necessarily bad for human health. We do it because there is third-party harm from the issue. Because we think that, for instance, being high or being drunk and driving could lead to problems on the street and could lead to third-party harms. In the case of duels, we don't see any third-party harms because we see two reasonable individuals agreeing with each other and agreeing to do something, right? Agreeing that one of them is going to be dead by the end of the duel. We think that people should have the capacity to engage in that sort of agreement and to engage in that sort of like contract, let's say, because at the end of the day they are responsible and that they have full ownership of their bodies. I'll take close in a moment. What we think is that the state intervening and telling you you don't have right over your bodies to do whatever you want with them if you're not harming people that are irrelevant to you, or if you're not harming anyone else in society, is rather unfair. Go.
So won't the friends and family of the one who loses will be harmed just like the drug?
We prioritize the will of the individual over the wills of the people around them, right? That is why your family doesn't have full control over you. For instance, in cases where you refuse to seek medicine, you explicitly refuse to seek medicine, your family can't intervene and force feed medicine down your throat. The reason that happens is obviously because the state recognizes that you have the ability to do whatever you want for whatever reasons, right? Let's take another example, right? We allow Jehovah's Witnesses, right, to refuse blood transfusions, even though we know that those blood transfusions might be necessary for the state's survival. Why do we do that? Because we recognize that they're not inflicting harm on third parties, and then we still think that they have the right to do whatever they want with their own body. We think that religion, and what I'm going to go on in a bit to talk about, honor, are not two fundamentally different things. We recognize the right of groups like the Amish to live in isolation and do whatever they want if they don't harm anyone else. We do all of that because we recognize that individuals ultimately have the right to inflict what we consider harm upon themselves as a society if they don't harm anyone else. No, thank you. What is this concept of honor, right? Why is it so important? Because people don't go into duels just to resolve random mundane questions. They go into duels because they believe that there is something very important at stake, right? Because they feel that their honor has been irreparably damaged And the only way to regain it is to prove that they're willing to die for the cause, or the dispute, or whatever, right? So honor is quite important and crucial and central to human existence and to the conception that one has of themselves. We feel that honor could even be more important than questions of faith, for instance, where we recognize such exceptions, because at the end of the day, it is a calculated measure by the individual rather than something that are group practices, right? So we believe that these questions cannot be resolved in any other way, right? You can't. This person will never be satisfied unless they get into the duel, right? We're not talking about people that have a range of alternatives. They have already reached the point where they only have one result out of it, and they're willing to risk their lives for whatever it is that the duel happens with, right? So, given that this definition of self is so linked to the concept of honor, right? We would like to pose the question of, like, why do we believe that the right to life is so important, or like why life is so important, if the person living after the refusal of the duel does not recognize themselves as what they want themselves to be, like when they don't recognize themselves as the self that they really want to be. Yeah, go.
Just like we don't condone suicide and actively usually make it illegal in our countries, we don't think there is an honor when you're no longer alive, and there's no way you can actually enjoy it.
So the reason the state goes against suicide is because of the irrationality that goes into the choice, right? If someone perfectly rational wants to kill themselves because of whatever reason, we see countries like Switzerland, for instance, legalizing assisted suicide. We see massive campaigns all over the West for assisted suicide in places like the UK, in places like the Netherlands, right? I even think Belgium probably legalized or had a referendum on the question, right? So we see that assisted suicide, for instance, is a rational, calculated decision to end one's own life, right? The reason we go against suicide is quite frequently because we believe that the person themselves, don't have the capacity to understand what they're doing. In this circumstance, we believe that the person has the rationality to consent into the sort of duel, right? So we think that this is a morally consistent position with what Switzerland are doing, for instance, where they say that you have the right to terminate your life if you feel that you don't want to live it anymore, right? And we see a direct parallel here again, right? So for instance, when a rugby player from Britain went to Switzerland to seek help from a clinic that offered assisted suicide, that happened because due to an accident, that person was no longer physically able to play rugby, which was central to that person's existence. We'd like to argue that one's honour could be as central to that person's existence as that sort of pastime. And we think that it's entirely fair to allow people to only live their lives if they rationally think that those lives have meaning. And we think that a life without honour doesn't have that much meaning at all. So what have we brought here? First of all, there's no third-party harm here. The opposition is going to struggle to prove any third-party harms. We think that when your interests and your family interests clash with each other, your interests should be the ones taken into account, the same way we do, for instance, when you refuse blood transfusion or when you refuse medical attention and you've rationally consented to do so. Second, we think that the questions that are resolved by jurors are not simple matters. They're very individual, they're very central to one's existence, and one's existence should not be forced to continue by the state if that person doesn't want to do so. For the above reasons, we're proud to propose.
Thank you to the Prime Minister. We now call upon the Leader of the Opposition.
To give you a quote in the definition of what to die means from Albert Hubbard, he says, "To die is a verb, to stop sinning suddenly." Now, we really want people to continue to sin, and not necessarily sin, but also be happy. We think we will never explain why honor is so essential to your life, and how life is only about honor. Life is about happiness. Life is about having children, and having, a husband and a wife, and being happy. Moreover, we never understood how once honor dies, it's dead forever. We think that honor manages to be recreated, and we think that society admits that, it's not always about that. Now let's see what they tell us. They tell us two things. They tell us that, it's about, limiting choices and about honor. On the limiting choices part, they tell us that, these people are consenting adults. First of all, I'm quite confused about this. Generally, when you will say, for example, Daniel, I will slap you, let's duel to the death, I do it because I'm in a moment of anger. And people who will generally are angry, they do not think through. For example, if I'm being scolded and I get angry, I really have the tendency of talking back, even though that makes my position even worse. So people do not really think when they are angry. Now, moreover, they are vague enough about how exactly this consent happens so that they can't really get attacked on this. But I'm just going to go through it because I know they just have no idea what to do there. So then they go and say, well, we limit choices when there's no third-party harm. But as Dovila said in her POI, there is a third-party harm. We have families, we have friends, and we have people around us who depend on us. And the moment that we die, they suffer. We think that in this moment, there's a clear third-party harm. Also, we wouldn't just we wouldn't necessarily let people come and do all sorts of things just because there's no third-party harm. They go and they say, well, we have Jehovah's Witnesses. First of all, I think that's a much more complicated way. First of all, having the choice not to accept treatment and having the choice to kill somebody else is totally different. We think that it's very, very different, and especially when it comes to faith. We think that these people, when they're actually convinced, for example, that they don't go to heaven if they don't do this, it's very, very different than me having to kill somebody to go to heaven. We would never let people, for example, Jehovah's Witnesses, go and murder people just because they believe it's right to do that and that they will get into heaven for that reason. Yes, Josh?
Can you explain to me if and why life has an inherent value?
I will explain plenty in my own case. Now, let's go on, and they say about honor. First of all, a few things. Is honor killing then great? If honor is this amazing? Are we fine with going and killing people just because we need to protect the honor of our family? And then they go on, how you're not satisfied unless you get a duel. First of all, we think that it's a very problematic right here. Why? Because the moment that we create duels as a social norm, let's see what happened, for example, in France and Italy, where at one point duels were really, really great. Now, the problem is, the moment you refuse a duel to the death, you are weak. You are shamed. If you refuse it, you do not get to have a real life. If you don't refuse it, you probably eventually end up dying. So one person gets the supposed honor, although he didn't really understand how you get empowered by killing somebody else, and the other person gets dead, and their family gets to suffer, and their children get to not see their father anymore, and their wives get to not have their husband go back home. We think this is sick, ladies and gentlemen. Now, even more, they go and they say, assisted suicide. Well, firstly, again, this is very, very different. Why? Because assisted suicide, although, as we said inside OP, we don't think it should be legal, but even more, if it would ever be legal, we think it's in cases where, for example, people are in so much pain that they cannot bear living anymore. We think it's about people who are in a vegetal state, not about people who can very well go and live for 20, 30 years, if it happens. Although, as we said, we don't really think assisted suicide should necessarily be legal. Now, let's go into this whole idea about honor. They come and tell us, a life with no honor has no purpose. We think this is A, with no analysis, and B, absolutely fake. I would rather have happiness in my life. I would rather have love in my life. As cute as that is, I know, shocking. Now, we think that there are so many more important things than honor, and we think it's not up for an individual to go and say, in the moment of anger, no thank you, to say, no, I need my honor, I need to go and risk my life. We think people do not realize in the short run how life is much more than about themselves. How life is about a legacy, and how life is about other people as well, and how you eventually end up understanding how your life impacts others. And in that moment, in the long run, when you're 60, you will say, God bless that this state has not let me duel to death, that would eventually go and have grandchildren. We are convinced that will happen. Now, two points. First of all, V for Vendetta, and second of all, about macho men. Yes, really, really fast though.
Is there other values that you hold above love?
I hold the biggest value to be loved. Now, and except for that, I hold all other values except for honor, which is really, really at the bottom, and I think Now, really fast to mind. First of all, V for Vendetta. Let's see what happened in France and in Italy when these things were legal. First of all, if you kill my family member, I will come and duel your family to the death until I exterminate you. Why? Because families are bound together. And the moment you kill my member of family, and me knowing that duels to the death are a possibility, I will hunt you down. And I will find you and every single member of your family and murder them. Sorry, not murder, because it's apparently dueling to the death, so it's very, very different. Now, what happens is we just create a bigger conflict. We just create even more hatred in society and even more instability. But let's go to something even more important and talk about who are the people who will be winning these duels. It will not be Daniel if I challenge him to a fight. It will be my biceps that win this. It will be people who are stronger, not necessarily better, not necessarily more intellectual, not necessarily more worthy to society. It will be the caveman that wins it. It will be the caveman that starts doing it and we just go backwards, and Manos and Yogi will probably be winning. We just go backwards in society. We just end up where we were before and where we moved from when we admit there's other values than just you having a huge bicep, as nice as that might be. We understand that it's more important. We understand that women, if they get challenged by men, they understand if this happens or not, will most probably not be able to win. We understand that there are people who have so many qualities and who, if they accept these duels, they will die. Why? Just because they think honor is amazing. So we think that we move society backwards. As I said, it creates a fake choice, because the moment that we refuse a duel to the death, you already bring shame upon your family, and you already bring this idea of weakness. So you feel forced to accept this. And we can see that this was the case in Italy and in France, where duels existed and duels that existed. And this is why we need to prevent this. We need to prevent these people from being able to abuse the situation, from abusing their power to be able to go and kill the people that they dislike. And we also consider this much more important when we think about the actual harms, when we think about the families that are involved there, and about how the families will come and kill your family, and then you will go kill their families, and then everybody will be killing each other. But apparently they're fine with this, because if they have no honor, they don't really need to live, now do they? So at the end of the day, it's up to you guys. It's up to you guys who you want to win. If you want the people who live in caves and who go at the gym and who just say racist and sexist things all day long, or if you want the intellectuals to win. If you want love to win, you must vote for side opposite. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. We now call upon the Deputy Prime Minister to offer us a 7-minute speech.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, Johan finished his speech saying that love should win this debate. We agree, love should win this debate. So should honor, so should individual choices, so should caring about your close friends. Everything that's on side government should win this debate. Why is love on side government? Because we've shown you that honor and, also love on our side are essential to the individual. Why are they essential? Because they form the individual. It's not only whether you are alive or not, it's whether you have your wife next to you, it's whether you have your children next to you, it's whether you are able to do what fulfills you in life. That's what's important to people. And we see that if you lose love, then you're allowed to make a consent, you're allowed to make a choice, you're allowed to make a choice which to end your life. So, moving on to what Johan said. He said that V for Vendettas, the argument about V for Vendetta and how cavemen will be winning this debate. Why we think that this is not about cavemen, and why we think actually cavemen are on that side of the debate. We think that what distinguishes humans and animals and humans and those cavemen that Johan is referring about is the ability to have emotions. It's the ability to have more than just living just to live, living just to have food, or living just to have drinks, or living just to walk on earth. No, thank you. We see that humans, as they are today, they have more than this. They have honor. They have love in their lives. They have all these emotions that make them human beings. And whenever they don't feel like they're complete, no thank you, whenever they don't think they're complete, whenever they think that something is missing from their life, they are allowed to make this choice that they should go to duel. So, further on, what do you want to refer to? Okay, I will take the middle.
Also, honor is a social construct that differs strongly between societies. Why don't we build a society where honor is not solved by violence, instead of promoting your policy where everybody has to kill each other or they're not honorable?
Now, we see that honor is an example, and also love is an example why something can be missing in your life. If in one society honor is not as valued, they won't be dueling over honor, they will be dueling over something else. But we believe that they will be dueling over things that are essential in their life, and we believe that they will be dueling over things that they found them missing in their life and they cannot live with. So, further on, what Manos brought to you in the previous speech was that this will have no third-party harm. And then they referred to it that the family will be harmed, that they will be grieving for the one that will be killed in the duel. We think that, yes, as Manos explained, we take the right of the individual to make a choice about his own life should be prioritized. No, thank you. Should be prioritized over the right of the family, over the harm of the family, because we don't see it as a harm. If the family is so so connected to that person, if the family loves that person, they will understand that actually their life cannot be complete without something that they are missing. They will understand that their life will not be worth living, and they will understand the choice that that person is actually making, and they will not actually be sorry for that person that goes to duel, because they understand that that choice will actually can on one side improve his life or end it honorably. No, thank you. So moving on to why we say that this is between two reasonable and consenting adults. Because we do not think that this will be a bar fight and everyone after a bar fight or a very drunk night, people go outside the bar and they duel to the death. As we explained, it's a very consensual choice. It's two reasonable adults. We accept that they want to do it. We accept that we realize that they have made a normal and consensual decision and they want to duel to the death. Johan.
So if they make a consensual decision under anger, how is honor involved there, not feelings of the moment?
Sorry?
If they make a consensual decision because of anger, how does honor exist that and not just me being booed?
They don't make a consensual decision because of anger. They realize that they're missing something very important, and we don't think that you're actually leading this debate in the wrong way. We don't think that people will duel just because you've stolen something from a pocket or something like that. We believe that people duel to death. They take it very seriously because, as you explained, someone murdered someone in Italy or France when this was legalized. Someone murdered a member of your family, and that's why you wanted to go to duel. You've lost something that was very, very important to you, and we don't think that they will duel because of certain things that are trivial in life. They will duel because of things that matter to them. They will duel because of things that they found them worthy. And that's where we found honor. That's where we find love. That's where we focus this debate. Also, on another level, we also give people the choice to do extreme sports, even though we realize that there will be harm, that they can harm themselves, and that they can and that they can harm themselves, and that may end into death. Wind gliding, around 3 to 7 people died only last week just because of wind gliding, and we think that that's a big mortality rate. But still, again, the state allows people to do such sport. Also swimming with sharks, or I don't know what, that's also allowed. Stuff that can kill you, but then again, that they on the other side bring you pleasure in life are allowed by the state, and we don't see why dueling to the death should not be one of those. No, thank you. So, why we see that the government should legalize this duel to the death? Johan said that life is not about honor, life is more about happiness and having a wife, having a partner and kids, and having walks in the park and romantic talks on the beach. Okay, we agree, but that's individual's choice, and that's how it should stay. Government should not be forcing anything down the throat of the citizens that, hey, maybe honor is important to you, or honor should not be important to you. Government should actually leave it to the individual's choice. And that's where we focus this debate, because once it's legalized, the government says, okay, you are now a responsible adult. You are now responsible for your own decisions. And once you make those decisions, you will be aware of the consequences. That's what responsibility actually means. You are aware of the consequences that can happen. So we believe that if you compare those two things, what are you missing in your life? What have you lost? And what can you gain by dueling to the death? That you will make a reasonable decision and you will go dueling to the death. And that's why we see that this debate won't happen over bar fights or over debaters drinking on campus. We believe that it will happen about more important things that truly matter to an individual. So for all these reasons, we believe that we should propose this debate.
Offer us a second construction.
Okay, good evening everyone. Before we move on to this debate, there are a couple of concessions in Yoge's speech or contradictions that I would like to point out. According to him, if the family is so close to the person who's dueling to death, they will understand that why he wants to kill himself. Exactly, by that logic, the family would be so close to them, what will end up happening is hundreds of years of family enmities, revenge, and what you will see is what Yuan explained. One person dies, and in order to avenge the death of that person, they would keep on killing each other's family members. And that is the logic, that is the exact argument that Jorge presented. And the difference between extreme sports and this motion is that in extreme sports you do take some sort of precaution. This is sure death, ladies and gentlemen, and we cannot support that. Let's talk about the 4 issues of this debate. Consenting, whether 2 consenting adults can take a decision. and resulting in death. Secondly, honor. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Honor and whether the physical abilities will define what will happen in the end or not. Let's talk about consent. Firstly, something that was never answered by team opening government, no thank you Josh, is the idea that anger diminishes choice, diminishes your rationality. So you're not taking a rational decision, and in the end, it is not about honor. Even if you believe it is something important, it is about anger, not refuted by this side of. No thank you. Secondly, the idea of third party being affected. Obviously families are being affected, something that Yuan has already dealt with, and they've already conceded to, because families are so close to you, and the system they are propagating is different castes, different families killing each other. Why? Because they want to avenge the death, and that's the kind of world they want to envision. So the consent issue goes to the opposition bench. Secondly, let's talk about honor. No, thank you, Josh. Just because you have a value, just because it is an intangible value, doesn't mean you propagate it, right? In the sense that just because, like for example, I disagree with the fact that Manos here equates honor and religion, because this is that inflated honor which legalizes and propagates things like honor killing of women who have shamed their families by having illegitimate babies. It is that religion, ladies and gentlemen, inflated religion, which is a value that allows terrorists to kill people. By their logic, that is completely fine, because that is a value, and we should respect that. Any one of you?
Yeah, for crying out loud, there's a major difference between going out to kill people and choosing whether you should die because your existence has become mutually exclusive with another man's existence for your own personal sake.
And that is why we feel that you should not let people believe things, such medieval things that, honor is something that you should die for. No, because by that logic, no thank you Roni, you should be in favor of honor killing as well. Because you think honor is so good, why should it be just between two consenting adults, ladies and gentlemen? And then there is no honor left after you're dead anyway. What is the use of that? And that is the inherent value. All of us start killing each other. No, thank you, Josh. All of us start killing each other, ladies and gentlemen. There's no society, there's no global youth forum, and that is the intrinsic value to life. You have to exist in order to even have this debate. No, thank you, Manos. So the whole point is, ladies and gentlemen, that just because it's a human, too much love doesn't hurt anyone, ladies and gentlemen, right? So the fact is that yes, there are some values that you propagate, but values that harm society and an active harm is associated to them, ladies and gentlemen, need to be suppressed. Another thing, ladies and gentlemen, which thank you, Manos. One thing that we need to realize, ladies and gentlemen, is this, that society has progressed from medieval times. Society has progressed to a point where you talk about, we think, yes, you can debate, not to death, but yes, you can debate as long as, you don't fall asleep. But the fact is this the right way to solve conflict? By their logic, in a second, Josh, by their logic, we believe that every time two consenting parties have a conflict and they're fine with it, they should have violence. You know what that equates to in the real world? War between two countries. Are you okay with that, Josh?
Johan promised me that he was going to tell me why life has an inherent value. He lied to me.
Yeah, I did. One inherent value is global youth forum, because you won't be having it if you start killing people. Life has an inherent value, ladies and gentlemen. Why? Because, it's a very philosophical question. We can discuss it later, but simply life has an inherent value because it does. Because the problem is, ladies and gentlemen, just like you guys are saying that honor has an intrinsic value, I'm saying life has an intrinsic value. Which wins? Life, ladies and gentlemen, not honor. Right? So the thing is that life has an inherent value because everything extends from it. Your rights, your existence, your economy, your politics, your sociology, anything extends from the basic premise of human beings existing. If you're not existing, then there's nothing, there's just land and water. I don't know what that is. Anyway, so the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, that talking about Yuan's favorite argument about macho men, ladies and gentlemen, and whatever, strong men with abs or whatever. Right? So the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, one thing that we need to realize is that Yuan mentioned something very important. It is this whole idea of physical ability. How in a duel, even if we legalize that, which person is going to win? The person who has more physical ability, more power. Similarly, in a conflict between countries, which these guys should be okay with by these by the logic of associated beliefs, ladies and gentlemen, they should be okay with it. And who will win? The country that is stronger. So the problem is that we are reverting back to a society in which you did have those cavemen, the concept of hunter-gatherer societies in which your leader or the strongest person would be a person who would not be intelligent or smart, but someone who has more physical power. That is the kind of society that we believe today's team government is sort of propagating, and we are highly, highly against that. So what we need to realize, ladies and gentlemen, today is firstly this thing. Never once did we find out that what is the definition of honor, what defines honor. I can think that, for example, somebody insults my girlfriend and I could kill that person. Why? And we can have a duel. Is that the right way to go about solving conflict, ladies and gentlemen, solving any sort of argument? According to Team Affirmative, yes, but we believe that's not the kind of world we are living in. Secondly, the whole idea of consent. We don't believe that consent exists in this place. We don't believe that anger, honor, and things like that should dictate your life choices and kill you. And lastly, ladies and gentlemen, this whole idea of consenting to die, for example. We never said we are in favor of assisted suicide, and that too happens in rare exceptions. The fact that you do not legalize drunk driving is also because that you might harm yourself, not because you might harm others. You also might harm yourself by drinking, while driving, while drinking, however way you like it. So, ladies and gentlemen, one thing that you have to remember is that Team Affirmative has not given us any concrete value, any concrete benefit for it, and what they want us is to support war, terrorism, honor killing, and all values that will harm the world. Do not vote for them, vote for love.
Thank you to the Deputy Leader of the Opposition. We now call upon the member of the government to open the bottom half of the debate.
I want you to imagine for a second, on the side of a mountain in Afghanistan, a party of about 120 people gathered. They're there to celebrate the marriage of a couple who's been in love since 16 years old. Right? There's drinking, there's dancing, there's eating, there's more drinking, they take a break, there's more drinking. It's kind of like being in an apartment with the Macedonians. Life is amazing. Until a bomb falls from the sky and kills 30 people. When the US government is asked about this afterwards, they say that the drone they sent into Afghanistan, carrying the missile, had thought that this wedding was a gathering of terrorists. They thought it was an Al-Qaeda gathering, and it had made a mistake. But of course, right, we can't stop these sort of incursions, because we're in the middle of a war on terror, and, well, you know what, there is such a thing as acceptable casualties, there's such a thing as mistakes that just happen. What does this have to do with this debate? What does this show us? It shows us two things. It shows us, A, that life is not absolute. It shows us there's some things greater than life. To the US government, the war on terror is greater than life. It also shows us that the government takes on the ability to take life away from non-consenting victims. Right? What does that tell us? That tells us what we do on government side is we ask the question, how can we deny people the right to choose for themselves when the government takes the right of choice away from us? At the same time that the government is committing these sort of atrocities and taking life away from people, they have the hypocrisy to tell us that we can't do the same for ourselves. The question of the debate isn't whether or not the government should allow this. The question of the debate is whether or not the government has the right to deny us this particular right. We say no. I want to talk about, firstly, the right to die and the right to take life, and secondly, the point that I've labeled killing done right. First of all, the right to die, the right to take life. I asked Johan, is there an inherent right to life? He didn't answer. Then I asked Daniel, and he said, yes. Why? There is. That's the quote. Is there an inherent right to life? Well, yeah, maybe we could debate it later. How about we debate it now in the debate where it's a central issue, a central theme of the debate, right? Then he says, maybe he doesn't know the definition of inherent. Inherent means what's the value of life in and of itself. So when he tells you we couldn't be at the youth forum without life, what it tells you is that without the youth forum, life therefore has no value. What that means is for individuals that have having the things that they place the value on greater than life, when those things are taken away from them, like if we were to take the youth forum away from you, you would all kill yourselves, right? If there's not an inherent value that's placing the value on something else, like honor, like religion, like all the things we talked about on the government side, right? And then the last thing he tells us, this is his best point, is, well, I think so. I think the opposite. We win. Okay, not this time. So we think that there's been an artificial value placed on life. We think that every person should be able to assign values to these criteria, whether it's life, whether it's honor, etc., for themselves, just as the government does. The government has decided that it's acceptable to kill people in the name of democracy. The government has decided it's acceptable to kill people for retribution in cases of the death penalty. The government has decided it's okay to kill people for oil, right? At that point, how can we say that people can't make these decisions for themselves? All these things are over life. We think it's a hypocritical stance that we shouldn't have to support, we shouldn't have to abide by on the government side.
And the funny thing is we have ways of stopping the government from doing that through our political system, through our courts. If you have this fight, there is no other thing than violence that is stopping that one individual from killing you, and that is what we don't condone.
Can you explain to me how the people that were killed in the Afghani wedding could have stopped the United States government from dropping a bomb? Because trust me, they have tried every possible way, and since 2002 when this happens, hundreds and hundreds of them have died. I don't think it's reasonable. Next thing, the government is elected to represent us, not to make these decisions for us, but rather to provide the infrastructure for us to make these decisions for ourselves. They can't tell us how to live our lives. They can't tell us how to end it either. We want to break this strange concept, this strange concept has that life is overall. Right? This is why we can give up our life. Why can we take life? Right? When an acceptable person is willing to give up their right to life, as we have just shown you in a contract, we think that we can again look at the hypocrisy of the government when the government is willing to, in all of these scenarios, kill unwilling individuals. Right? Listen to honor killings in the last speech. What victim consents to an honor killing? Listen to the type of religious murders they talk about in the last speech. Which of these victims consent to these killings? None of them. And he says, what's the difference? I think the difference is pretty freaking clear on our side of the house that these people have consented to being put in this scenario as opposed to the opposition side. Not this time. Second point, killing done right. Here's the thing. Aggression is never ideal. Right? When two people hate each other, it's never ideal, but it's the world that we live in. It's the dark side of humanity. It exists within all of us, right? Every Star Wars, Harry Potter, all these movies have shown us this, right? That's our evidence. Okay? But what we have to prove on our side of the house isn't that we have a perfect scenario for when two people hate each other. What we need to show you is that murder is not the way to do it. What we need to show you is that duels to the death can minimize the harms in this scenario. We want to do it in 3 different ways. Killing done right. 1, we force a delay. 2, talking about the powerful thing that they talk about cavemen, Manos and Yorgi, right? And 3, how to stop the cycle of violence, not at this time. First of all, we force a delay, right? When two individuals, as opposed to going up and just fighting each other, murdering somebody right off the bat, when they have to consent, when they have to think about it, when they have to be rational, what it does is it forces them to put a delay in the scenario. We think this is incredibly important. And again, if you look at the analogies that exist inside of the rest of society, anytime we take a life in society, we make a delay. Look at the death penalty. There's a ridiculous number of appeals processes that we have to go through to make sure that the decision is correct. Look to when we have suicide versus assisted suicide. This is why suicide is illegal and countries have assisted suicide. It's because there's a delay in the process, right? When we shift from murder to duels, we also introduce a delay in the process and follow the same line of reasoning that happens any other time in society that we have this process. What they want me to tell us is that when people are going to murder them anyway, why that's a better scenario than having a situation with a delay like we have. Second of all, powerful. They're the more powerful person. Presumably you're going to get to choose your weapon, right? They're not beating each other to death with cudgels. You'd use a lightsaber if you're a girl, so that clearly balances things out. Again, we think it's a better scenario than in murder, where one person doesn't even know that they're entered into this duel. When you're being murdered, they show up with a gun, kill you before you even know what happened. How is that any more fair than the scenario that we're talking about? And then last of all is the cycle of violence. Right? The retaliation that they talk about that exists from family to family happens in this scenario. It's similar to gang violence, right? One person's robbed, that's messed up. Then we go stab that person, that's messed up. Then there's a drive-by, it escalates and escalates and escalates. And the harms from that is exactly what they talk about, the cycle of violence. When we have a duel where both parties come to the table and say, this is how we're going to resolve our differences, the winner and the loser is determined, this process is over, much more clearly than it would be in murder. Right? I think in all 3 examples, every argument we've had so far, we show that duels is the better way of minimizing the impacts of aggression, and we say the government has no right to stop us from taking this course of action.
Thank you, member of the government. We now call upon the member of the opposition.
It is so funny how the proposition is talking about civility and honour and all these wonderful principles and values, and about the right to choose, and about how government should not slaughter people without any kind of real reason, when we really want to regress our society to before like, I don't know, civilization, when we just slaughter each other because we didn't know any other ways to actually solve our differences. I know one way, I'm doing it right now. Today we've progressed, we have other ways to solve our differences, and that is what we support. Now, I'm going to talk to you about a few main issues about in this debate. Briefly about honour and how the opposition completely misunderstands it. Secondly, about choice, and thirdly, about the value of life. But before that, let me go a bit to the rebuttal, which was completely ridiculous. First of all, it was basically just a model extension, how saying, like, well, we can facilitate nice duels and prevent murder with that. Well, first of all, murder happens now, it's illegal now, and happens out of anger, like he said. So if I'm angry now at you, and I'm irrational, then I'm going to still murder you now. I'm not going to wait until the government is going to allow me to do it in a more civilized way. Plus, if I want to murder you and you do not want to be murdered, you will not agree to the duel. So it's kind of simple. Then they said, look, well, gangs will not have gang violence. Well, I think that, like, if gangs would want to have this kind of, 18th century duel, then we could do it now. I mean, they're gangs, they do illegal stuff, they don't care if it's illegal now. So, I mean, like, I don't understand their intention whatsoever. And they were, like, saying, like, they were blaming the opening opposition of not explaining why life is valuable, when actually Daniel gave you a very nice and prompt explanation why life is valuable. I'm going to extend on it. And they just said, like, well, American government kills people, therefore life has no value. I disagree with that. Yeah.
Could you re-explain what his definition was besides, like, it is?
No, he explained to you. Okay, I'm actually going to the life of value in my own constructing material, so don't worry, I'll explain to you. But you can't just, like, assume that life has no value. You have to explain why it has no value if you do believe so. Your explanation is not enough. But let me go into my substantive. First of all, before this debate, I want to say, like, it's not like I want to talk about honor basically, because what they say, like, is that, like, honor is one concept that, like, people value, but they completely detach the concept of honor from society. As I told you in my POI in the very first speech, honor is understood differently, and the ways to gain honor is understood differently in different societies. And societies can be changed and constructed through development. Like in the Netherlands, like, I'm not going to want to kill my debate partner because he insults me. But, like, maybe in another country that might be okay. But we do not want this kind of society. We think that we can all progress. That's what we want. And basically, like, even if it is about honor, we don't condemn violence with that. I mean, like, why if someone wants to protect his honor, we can condone violence in that case? So we do not think so. And plus, it has very wide societal consequences, because if you adopt this policy, then you adopt the reasoning and you adopt the stance that you can only protect your honor if you want to go to a duel. So if I am challenged to a duel and I say, no, I don't want to die, I'm not honorable anymore, what kind of society is that? That is completely ridiculous. And like the first one was to say, like, first of all, you're going to have a lot of people who do not want to make this choice, who do not understand honor in this way, but because of societal pressure, because society now understands honor in this way, they will have to enter a duel, so they will not live their lives in shame. And we are completely object to that. No. Now, speaking something about choice, because both teams on this side value choice, and we want to make rational choices. They said that. We want to make choices that don't harm other people, and they said, like, with drugs, we don't make choices when they harm society at large, right? So first of all, let's talk about the duelists, right? When did you make choices? First of all, they can't make a rational choice in this case, because none of us who hasn't killed someone understands what it likes to feel to kill someone to be the winner of the duel. We all watch these movies and we all know these romantic stories about how, like, two gentlemen fight with a lady and the one wins the lady, and it's all very nice. But in reality, killing someone is a horrible thing. Even people who are allowed to kill someone, like in the military, once they do that, suffer horrible consequences for PTSD and other things. So we do not want that kind of choice because it is not a rational choice. Speaking thirdly, there is a third party in this case, because the fight, he didn't define to us when can you have a duel. So the reason why the duel is going can be over a third party. Maybe it's over, for example, Magnus and Georgi fighting over Lazar, or maybe somebody's fighting over a lady, or maybe we're fighting over some kind of a reason. And if I am a person in society, and before the duel is announced, I know that I can choose one of the, like Zar can choose one of those guys and prevent one of them being murdered. He can actively prevent that murder being happening. So therefore he is making a choice, and therefore now the murder for one of them, the responsibility for one of them dying falls on his shoulders. I don't want that choice. He doesn't want that choice for one of them dying because I think he loves both of them. So this is how choices doesn't happen in this debate whatsoever.
Clear to point.
Now, and they also said, like, actually before that I'll take you.
Yeah, could you explain to me how choice happens more in a scenario where one person just murders somebody?
No, doesn't. I'm like, I just keep them understanding. Like, I mean, like, if I want to murder someone, I'm a terrible person, and I would murder someone under status quo. I would still murder him under the dual thing, because I mean, like, it doesn't make sense. Plus, if I want to murder someone and the other person doesn't want to be murdered, I ask him to a duel, he refuses a duel, then I still murder him. Got it? Fine. Now, speaking about the whole choice, and also they were talking to you about how if it harms the society in large, then it's valid to ban it. So let me talk to you about the value of life and why I actually value life. Daniel began to explain this to you, but I'm going to continue this a bit. Now, when we know like the reason why we value human life is because society is basically based on it. If you don't value human life, you don't value anything at all. The reason why we value freedom of speech, freedom of choice, whatever kind of freedom you want, privacy, whatever, is because it makes our lives better, it makes us live longer, and makes us live nicer and better lives. But also it's because it makes society function, it makes society stand on where it is. Without the value of life, there is no society, we're all in chaos, and nothing is valuable. Now, they also said that, if we establish this principle that, like, it is okay to kill someone because of honor and that's a good societal value, then we completely destroy this thing. And by saying that I can kill myself or allow myself to be killed and also kill someone else, I completely deny the value of human life. It doesn't exist anymore. This is like, well, militaries kill people. A military is a societal decision, or it should be a societal decision to go into war for a good reason. If they go to war for a bad reason, then they shouldn't go to war for a bad reason. Yes, I do think that if a country is being insulted by an attack and it goes to war and kills people mindlessly, that is a wrong thing to do, and that is society's failure, not the government's failure. Yes, so that's what I'm talking to you about. First of all, as we know that this policy is going to change the society, and it's going to make us condone violence and make honor completely connected to violence. Thirdly, I'm talking about that there are third parties in this case, and society at large is going to be extremely harmed. Second, and thirdly, I think explain to you the value of life. Why that is valuable? Because it's the only thing. If life is not valuable, then nothing else is valuable. So they should remember for these reasons, there's no regress, there's progress, and I beg you to oppose.
Thank you, member of the opposition. We now call upon the final speaker from the government side. The government witness.
Okay. In a blind fury, in a desperate desire to protect someone you love, or defend something you believe in, or to give physical expression to something that has made your blood boil, something that makes you feel terrified and furious, you act in blind rage. Crimes of passion are a tragedy, ladies and gentlemen, and they happen. I don't know where the side opposition lives in this debate. In a world where we solve things is by coming to the Global Youth Forum and having a nice chat about it. Ladies and gentlemen, crimes of passion happen. Crimes of violence happens. Gang wars happen all the time. And what we're going to talk to you about today on side opposition is how our plan actually deals with that instead of saying all you need is love, which is lovely, but it is incredibly naive, ladies and gentlemen. So, before I begin, reminding you about what Josh said, I'm going to discuss 5 main points of refutation today. And let's discuss the first point here, okay? The biceps will win. We're going to call that the point. So you aren't worried that biceps and not love are going to be the winners of a duel. So ladies and gentlemen, as I reminded you today, murders happen, okay? And gang wars happen. And they are not, ladies and gentlemen, not won by intellectuals, okay? Today, crimes of passion happen, and people sit in jail, and that happens all too often. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'll come to this a little bit later, but what side opposition have given you today is an incredibly binary situation. They're like, option A is we're all going to sit down and work it out, like, together. And option B is, I'm a murderer anyway, and I'm just going to come and kill you. No, thank you. But there is a middle ground, ladies and gentlemen. The opposition has completely failed to recognize the subtlety and nuance of our society. Because sometimes what people need is an outlet and an expression to their rage and their fury. They need, ladies and gentlemen, they need a white glove. They need to slap you across the face and say, I challenge you to a duel, and then get to either think about it or maybe not exactly do that right then and there. But the point is, ladies and gentlemen, that as Josh told you, what we introduce is is an element of delay. The first government told you that there is some element of consent to these people. So how does that consent happen? We need to be in some form of environment where we see that consent, where that is embodied. So it's not a question of, I'm going to whip out my pistol and shoot you because you offended my girlfriend or you offended Lazar, which would be awful. Okay, what we are saying is, I get to whip out my white glove and challenge you to a duel, no thank you. And that is where we come into this debate, okay? Because it is not a binary situation. And what they've set up for you is a complete mischaracterization of the people in our society. They're living in Harry Potter, where there are good people and bad people. We on side government are living in the real world. Okay, second point of refutation, the cycle of violence. So I don't actually know what they think happens in status quo, but at the moment, as Josh explained to you, violence escalates, okay? First there's a shooting in a bar because somebody offends somebody else's tattoo. Sorry, one, I think they're beautiful. Anyway, and then, then what happens is a drive-by shooting, and then somebody's, girlfriend gets slapped up in an alley or something like that. Today, violence escalates. And what happens when you challenge somebody to do a duel? There is hype, there is formality, there is performance, this is a duel, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, and what we say is, this has far more likelihood of ending the cycle of violence. What the opposition need to prove to us today is why, under their model of let's just leave it be and let these gang wars escalate. And by the way, they've been going on since the 20s. I mean, I don't know where the opposition is living on this, but these wars have not de-escalated. They are still there, and very much so, ladies and gentlemen. So, we say that the side that is more likely to decrease and to de-escalate the cycle of violence is the side opposition. All right, the inherent value of life is my third point of refutation, and I'll take you in a moment. Oh, I'll take you right now. That's okay.
All right, so how is the Pakistani family that got killed, or parts of the family that got killed, going to stop the US drones by a duel?
Okay, that's exactly, I'm going to come to that exactly when we talk about our extension, but that's exactly the point, because what Josh was explaining to you, and you're getting me off track, really, whatever, we'll get to that. The point is that because we allow governments to make these decisions, that there are values greater than one life, individual people should equally be allowed to do the same thing. What we're doing is extending the logic that exists in our society today. Okay, it's not a massive leap of faith, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so the inherent value to life. So, Daniel refused to debate that because, and I'm going to quote here, that's a really philosophical question. Well, guess what? This is a philosophical debate, ladies and gentlemen. And we're going to thank Dovilla for actually addressing that question. So what we say on that point, and that brings me exactly to what Anne just brought up, we accept prioritization by our governments. We accept that our governments can say that there are values more important than one human life. For example, when we're defending our country, for example, euthanasia, for example, all these kinds of things where we say the government can accept that there are values higher than life. And you know what? Danielle says that life is about happiness. And Yuan says that life is about love. And the point of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, that there is something for all of us that we're not willing to live without. And for some people, ladies and gentlemen, that is honour, as First Government explained to you. All right? So if I'm living without the ability to do something that I really love, that for me might mean that there's no point to living. So if I can be prepared to defend that value or that person or that thing to the death, ladies and gentlemen, and we do that as government, so why should we not be entitled to do it as individuals? No, thank you. All right. Fourth point of refutation, anger should not dictate your choices. Well, again, ladies and gentlemen, guess what? It does. Because what we're talking about, inherently interwoven in the human condition, is the fact that anger does blind us, Danielle. Okay, we do make decisions in anger that I'll take you in 1 second, that we do regret. And what our model says to you is because, as First Government tell you, inherently there has to be some form of consent, right? It's not whipping out a shotgun and just shooting you. What it is some form of consent that says now we are exiting the phase where I am furious with you and want to rip your head off, and entering the phase where I have challenged you, sir, to a duel, okay? In the name of the Queen or whatever else it is. Thank you, Daniel. What?
So honor is the most important value I have. Why is something
No, Daniel, that's not the point.
To murder?
That's not the point, Daniel. The point is that life there are values that go beyond simply existing, okay? If I can't, for example, see my family, for me, there might be no more reason to live. And we're saying that because society allows us as a collective to say that there are values higher than just simply the act of existence versus the act of living, right? Because society allows us to do that, and because we do that as a society, even with our economic policies, ladies and gentlemen, okay, some people, that's one point. Okay, even our economic policies demonstrate that. So if we can do it as a collective, why can't we do it as individuals? So Josh explained to you today that life is not an ultimate value, and that if governments can prioritise values over lives, they can't remove from us individuals the ability to prioritise values over lives. He also explained to you that we are protecting people from their anger. We're protecting the tragedy of passion crimes and for people sitting in jail when there were other options. And ladies and gentlemen, today, side opposition is living in a wonderful world where debate solves all problems, and one day that will be true. But until it is, ladies and gentlemen, a fight to the death is actually something that we on side proposition believe will make a better life for everyone. So we thank you for the work.
Thank you, Government Whip. Now to the final speaker from the opposition.
Ladies and gentlemen, what the proposition so far has said is very simple. They basically say there are some things that are more important than life, that if you don't have those things, be they honour or be they your family after the wedding, if you don't have those things anymore, there is no other, we cannot stop you from killing someone else if it's consensual, and that is your choice. What we've said on our side is that whatever choice you give people, that should never override the value of humanity and the value of life that we give in our society. And this is our extension from second opposition, and we've given you multiple reasons. The only reason we got back is, no, but government sometimes prioritizes some lives over others, and the government sometimes kills people. We don't think that's enough reason for us to say that you and other people can stupidly throw away their lives in a duel just because they think that you think you will have and should have a choice for that. Choice is limited in some instances. We don't allow people to buy drugs that kill them. We don't allow people to commit suicide. Most countries aren't as stupid as my country and don't allow euthanasia for the very same reason. Now, what I'm going to talk about firstly is the value of humanity, what it is. Then secondly, I'm going to talk more about choice and why actually there is no rational choice. And we've given you multiple reasons there was no response to that. And then thirdly, what kind of harms we see to third parties and to society at large. And how actually we do have a societal system to solve most issues like police, a court system, and politics, and that we should follow those routes and not having duels. Now, firstly, the value of humanity, and this has been very clear throughout the debate on the opposition side. If you have no life, if there is no existence, then you do not have these values that you value so much. You can re-find your honour or whatever else you want later in life at some other stage. You cannot learn anymore, you cannot get that anymore if you don't exist. That is why, as a society, we value humanity over all other things. That is why we have human rights protections. All of those are for creating humanity, recognizing humanity, and giving that value and protecting it.
Right. I don't actually think that we value humanity over all things, and we've given you examples where the government doesn't. Moreover than that, even if the government values all things over humanity as a blanket policy, it should let individuals make that choice for themselves when they differ from
all right. I have already given you examples where the government says, no, you cannot kill yourself or stupidly take drugs or do anything else like that. I can also give you reasons why the examples you gave are actually examples on our side. Because if you have anti-terrorism policy, that's not because we like killing people with drones. It is because we actually value our own citizens' lives over certain other citizens' lives, but it still is about the life of these citizens and not about others. And the same is true for euthanasia in the case of countries where they allow it. The cases, for example, in the Netherlands where we allow it, is in those cases where your physical pain is so harmful that you cannot experience life anymore, which is something completely different from, say, a case of I have lost my honour, or there is a value that is bigger, where you can still live through life. And we think that that is essentially much, much different. And even if we would say that euthanasia, we would say that we should not allow that in those cases either. No, thanks. But the idea that I have shown you is that there is a potential to grow, there is a potential to humanity that is only there when you're alive, and that is what we recognize as society, what we protect. As soon as we say you can throw away that life, and you can go and do whatever you want to with that, what we then recognize is that life actually doesn't have the value that we've assigned to it through all the protections that we have by saying you cannot kill someone, you cannot throw away your life. And when we say that, then basically we condone the idea that humanity has no value, which is something we should never, ever, ever allow. Now, no. Now, the idea here is also that but people have a choice. They can make rational decisions. They should have a choice about anything that they can make rational decisions about. Now, we've shown you a couple of things. Firstly, we've shown you this is not a rational decision. Even if they take a few days and they delay the decision, it's still going to be made out of anger, which we don't think is the most rational emotion that you have. Or it could be because of peer pressure. Because in the case of honor killings, people might regret the fact that they have to kill the person they're going to be killing, but they still do it because their family pushes them to do it. Now, this is a case, this is obviously a non-consensual case, but this might still happen in the case of a family feud. And those things are things where we are allowing people to pressure other people into making a horrible decision. We don't think that's the right choice. No. Now, thirdly, we also have said, and this came mostly from first opposition, that people aren't able to make that long-term decision. They only see the here and now. They don't realize that they will actually have a future life in which they can grow, and that the government is the one party here that can realize that and is able to stop them from doing that. Secondly, about choice, we've also said that people cannot actually assess the effect of that choice. Obviously, they can't assess the effect of what it is being dead. Unless you have a very clear vision or you've already had a near-death experience, most people don't actually know what's going to happen after that. More importantly, however, we also don't know what it feels like to kill someone unless you've actually done it, and how harmful, how painful, how horrible that can be, and how much effect it will have on your life. No response to that, but you can go, Mark.
Yeah, so even if whatever you say is true, governments routinely ask us to consent to die for issues like national identity or sovereignty of how it works. When that national becomes personal, my identity is at threat. Why shouldn't I be able to consent to my right to die?
Alright, so we've already mentioned that this is a political decision where we go through a whole political process which is considerably different when we already have tried to solve things through other means than violence, rather than what you're saying. But thirdly, we've said that on an individual level, you cannot make that decision rationally, whereas through a state, we have so many individuals getting together, and that is why we have a political system doing this, that we assume that it will be rational and therefore will be acceptable. But thirdly, in that case, in that instance, we're actually protecting our lives through protecting ourselves in war. And we're not condoning an aggressive war. We think that's silly, and we think that governments shouldn't be doing that. And actually that's true in most legal entities in international law. Now, thirdly, what kind of harms do we see? We see third-party harms to the family. We see third-party harms to those persons that might be the object of whatever decision we're making. We see great harm to society because we're condoning violence. We're condoning a solution to something that you could also do through courts, and that you could also do through all sorts of other means. And we see a system where you create and condone family feuds instead of stopping them through the police. That's how we stop gang wars. That's how we stop all sorts of other things. And that's what we should keep on doing. We beg you to oppose.